The first time they heard her name, it was whispered like a legend. Valkyrie, they said, as if the word itself carried the weight of fate. The soldiers didn't say it loudly, not at first. Not because they were afraid of her, but because they were afraid of what she could do. They were in the middle of an active war zone where every breath could be the last, and the last thing anyone wanted was to attract the wrong kind of attention. But the enemy had already noticed. The convoy had been ambushed, and 3 hostages were taken. The world held its breath. The mission was simple in theory: rescue the hostages and get out. But in reality, it was a trap wrapped in silence, surrounded by danger. And the only person who could pull it off was the woman everyone called Valkyrie. Before I tell you what happened next, tell me in the comments where you're rewatching from. I love knowing who's listening. They said she had eyes like a hawk. They said she could hear the faintest shift in the wind. Said she could kill a man without ever being seen. But none of those stories explained the most important thing about her. She was not a monster. She was a human being. Her name was Alina Kovacs, and she had joined the army because she wanted to protect people. Not for glory, not for medals, but because she couldn't stand the idea of being helpless while others suffered. She was the kind of person who stayed up late writing letters to families of fallen soldiers, even when she was exhausted. She was the kind of person who cried quietly in the shower after a mission, because she knew what she had done and what it had cost. On the day of the rescue, the air was thick with dust. The sun sat low in the sky, turning the desert into a sea of gold and heat. Alina lay hidden behind a broken wall, her rifle steady against her shoulder. The scope's glass reflected the world in tiny, precise detail. Every movement, every shadow, every ripple in the air. Her hands were calm, her heart was not. She thought about the hostages, 3 strangers whose lives were now tied to her own. She thought about the families who might never see them again. She thought about the way fear could twist a person, make them do things they never imagined. She thought about the moral line she walked every time she pulled the trigger. And she wondered, for the first time in her career, if she was doing the right thing. The mission had been planned in the darkest hours of the night, when the base was quiet and the world seemed paused. Her commander had briefed them with clipped urgency. The hostages were being held in an abandoned compound deep in enemy territory. The enemy had fortified the area, using civilians as bait. It was the kind of plan that made even the bravest soldier hesitate. Alina listened in silence. She felt the weight of responsibility settle on her shoulders like a heavy cloak. She had volunteered for this. She had chosen this life. But the fear in her chest was real. The fear of failure. It's the fear of losing someone under her watch. The team moved in as the sun began to sink, turning the sky into a bruised purple. The terrain was harsh, covered in jagged rocks and shattered concrete. The sound of their boots was swallowed by the wind. The air smelled of burnt metal and dry grass. They reached the compound. The walls were high, the gates heavy. There were guards too many to alert. The mission was no longer simple. It was a gamble. Alina set up her position on a ridge overlooking the compound. Her breathing slowed, her mind sharpened. She watched the guards move like clockwork. She watched their patterns. She watched the space between their steps. She watched for the smallest mistakes. Then she saw the hostages. They were in a small courtyard, bound and frightened. Her eyes were wide with panic. One of them was a woman, her hair tangled and her face pale. Another was a young man, trembling. The third was older, his hands shaking as if he could not hold on to life itself. Alina's stomach twisted. She wanted to rush in and save them right away. She wanted to run into the compound and fight. But she knew the cost of a rushed decision. She knew the cost of losing them in a hail of bullets. So she waited. The wind shifted. A cloud of dust moved across the landscape, hiding the enemy's movements. Alina's finger hovered near the trigger, ready. She felt the weight of the world in her hands. Then she saw it. A guard shifting position, exposing a weak point in their defense. It was a small window of opportunity, only a moment. Alina exhaled. She fired. The shot was clean, precise. The guard fell without a sound. The others didn't even realize what happened until it was too late. And in that moment, Alina became more than a sniper. She became a key turning point in a life-or-death story. The rescue team moved like a tide, surging forward with controlled aggression. Soldiers climbed the walls, breaking through doors, clearing rooms. Their movements were synchronized like a single organism. Alina watched from her ridge, eyes locked on the compound, ready to eliminate any threat that could endanger the hostages. The enemy responded with a sudden wave of fire. The air erupted in chaos. Bullets ricocheted off walls, kicking up dust. The sound was deafening, yet Elena's mind remained calm. Her training took over. Her instincts guided her. Her heart stayed steady. But then came the moment that made her question everything. A child appeared in the courtyard, one of the hostages' family members, perhaps a local who had been hiding. The child froze, eyes wide, too young to understand the danger. The enemy's gunmen were closing in. Alina could see the child's fear. She had a clear shot at the enemy, but the child was in the line of fire. The moral dilemma struck her like a blow. She could save the hostages. She could eliminate the threat. But she could also risk killing an innocent. For a heartbeat, she hesitated. In that hesitation, the world seemed to slow. The wind whispered. The dust hung in the air like a curtain. Elena's mind flashed with memories: her mother's hands, her father's voice, the faces of those she had lost. She realized then that being a soldier did not mean she had to become someone without a conscience. She could still be human. She adjusted her aim, not at the enemy, but at a point just beyond them. A precise shot, meant to disable without killing. The bullet struck a support beam, sending a cascade of rubble that blocked the enemy's line of sight. It was a risky move, but it worked. The enemy's focus broke. The rescue team seized the moment. They freed the hostages and moved them out. The hostages ran, stumbling, tears mixing with dust. The child was pulled to safety. Lena watched them go, her heart swelling with relief and fear at the same time. When the last hostage was clear, Alina fired one final shot, this time at the enemy's machine gun nest. The weapon exploded, and the remaining gunmen scattered. The compound fell silent. The soldiers returned to base with the hostages, exhausted but alive. They carried the weight of what they had seen and what they had done. The hostages embraced each other, sobbing with relief. The team looked at Alina with a new kind of respect. They didn't call her Valkyrie because she was feared. They called her Valkyrie because she saved lives when the world said it was impossible. In the following days, the story spread through the base like wildfire. Soldiers whispered her name with reverence. People who had once doubted her now stood in silence when she walked by. The legend grew, but Alina remained quiet. She did not want fame. She did not want glory. She wanted to know that the lives she saved mattered, because the truth was not that she was unstoppable. The truth was that she chose to act when others could not. And in the end, that choice made her more than a soldier. It made her a guardian. Because courage isn't about being fearless. It's about doing what's right, even when fear is louder. Because the world can call you a legend, but only your heart knows the real cost. If this story touched you, share your thoughts in the comments. And if you want more stories like this, subscribe to Whispered Words, because every hero deserves to be remembered. If you believed in her bravery, hit subscribe, because this story is only the beginning.